We've all heard of the Grim Reaper and his scythe. But what about his cat? This is a story about a cat named Oscar and the amazing ability he had. For many people who are consciously approaching the end of their lives, whether due to old age or a serious, incurable illness, there are places they can turn to called hospices. Hospices are places where these patients can live with dignity and be cared for by nurses if they can no longer fully care for themselves. Even though these places help many people, they can still be quite lonely to live in. This is why many hospices love to invite animals to cheer patients up and give them support and love during the difficult times they face. Time and time again, animals have proven that they can provide an unrivaled level of comfort and love to patients nearing the end of their lives. Most often, people think of animals that help as dogs because they are naturally friendly and loving creatures that want nothing more than to give their love to others. You might be surprised by the story of a cat named Oscar, who provided comfort to hundreds of patients. But that's not all he did. Oscar had an amazing ability. He seemed to be able to predict when a patient would die and comforted him in his last moments. Oscar's story began in 2005, when he was born. It was a beautiful black and white tabby kitten who was born at a local animal shelter along with other little kittens. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Luckily for the cat, a local hospice was looking for a new addition to its team of animals and decided to take in the little fluffy bundle. He was returned to the Steer House Nursing and Rehabilitation Center, located on the grounds of Rhode Island Hospital in downtown Providence. He became one of 6 cats living in the hospice, and his new home was the 3rd floor of the building where people with dementia lived until the end of their lives. According to Dr. Dose, who worked at Steer, Oscar was a very scared cat at first. Hospice. In fact, he didn't want to go outside. He preferred to keep to himself. Often it could be found in the closet or somewhere under the bed. Somewhere. This is quite normal behavior for cats, especially when they are brought to a new and unfamiliar place, as they are frightened by all the new sights and sounds and need time to get used to their new surroundings. While this is normal for most cats, what Oscar did next was strange. He seemed to have an uncanny ability to tell when a patient was about to die. According to Dr. Dose, who worked closely with the cat during his stay in hospice, Oscar only showed up when someone was dying. The cat walked around the floor, examining and sniffing the patients in the ward. Sometimes he would simply walk on, and sometimes he would jump onto the patient's bed and curl up next to him, as if he wanted to comfort him as best he could in his last moments of life. These are the patients who passed away after just a few hours. There was definitely something special about this cat. At first, the nurses did not pay attention to the cat's behavior and the strange coincidences that occurred with the patients he visited. But as it turned out, Dr. Dosa explains, after he did this a few times, we eventually found out that the people he stayed with were usually the next to leave. There was 1 death, then 2, and eventually he killed 20 or 30 people in a row. And at that point, everyone started saying, "Wow, this is something completely unique." After the patients left, Oscar would quietly rise from his place on the bed and silently walk out of the room, as if he knew he was no longer needed there. Quite soon, after this had happened several times, doctors and nurses began to pay attention to how the cat behaved and who he visited. They then took this as a sign of impending death and subsequently notified the patients' families of what they believed might happen. This amazing little cat gave people time to say goodbye to their loved ones before it was too late. And for those patients who had no relatives to visit them, Oscar remained curled up on their bed until the very end, providing them with companionship and comfort they might otherwise have missed. Throughout the patient's care process, Oscar liked to stay in the room with them. The cat seemed to feel that it was his job to stay and watch over people as they passed from this world to the next. In most cases, the patient's family was happy with this and did not object to the presence of a cute cat at the time of death. But from time to time, there were families who preferred that the cat be removed from the ward. When this happened, Oscar would pace back and forth in front of the patient's door and meow constantly, protesting that he was being locked in. Fortunately, this did not happen too often. In fact, many families have told me that having Oscar around is a great comfort to them and their loved ones, says Dr. Dosa. Whether it was just connecting with lonely people or keeping the kids busy, it was truly something families were grateful for. The cat became widely known for his abilities and was featured in an article in the New England Journal of Medicine. Soon, his story became popular, and hundreds of thousands of people learned about his incredible abilities. He quickly acquired new nicknames, one of which was the Angel of Death, which certainly suited this amazing little tabby kitten very well. When Oscar was asked how he was able to predict the deaths of patients, which he was often right about, Dr. Dosa suggested, "I think that in the end your guess is as good as mine. It is likely that he is reacting to some kind of smell when the cells begin to break down." Unfortunately, in 2013, when Oscar was 8 years old, he began to have a severe allergic reaction and had to be rushed to the vets, where he was placed in the intensive care unit. It was a terrible time for those who knew and loved the old cat, and at one point it seemed that he might not survive, as his heart stopped beating and he died for a few seconds. Luckily, some quick-witted veterinarians managed to bring him back to his senses. After a short period of treatment with veterinarians to make sure he would be okay, he was discharged and taken home to a hospice, where he became a patient himself for several months. Quite soon he regained his health and became his former self, visiting those who needed it most and providing them with comfort. Oscar spent the rest of his life in a hospice in Rhode Island, until he eventually passed away at the age of 10. He ended up predicting the death of over 100 patients, and during that time provided comfort and love to as many people as he could. Thanks to these amazing feline abilities, many families were able to see their loved ones for the last time and say goodbye to them. But it wasn't only the cat's abilities that were amazing. Oscar himself was an incredible animal, as he took the time and effort to comfort those who would otherwise be scared and alone in their final moments. This adorable little tabby kitten captured the hearts of so many people. And when it came time for him to say goodbye and pass on to the next world, he was surrounded by those who loved him dearly. A true testament to the kind of animal he was. And while some people may have been worried about a cat with a scythe coming to visit them, I think it was a great way to prepare people for what was to come and reassure them that everything would be okay. Let us know what you think about this story, and don't forget to share it with your friends. It might inspire them and brighten their day.